The night my husband trusted me too much. Welcome to Silent Confessions, the channel where stories of love, betrayal, and forbidden connections come to life. Today's tale, titled The Night My Husband Trusted Me Too Much, unravels the delicate threads of trust, temptation, and emotional turmoil. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to uncover more untold stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The evening began like any other, with a quiet calm settling over the shimmering city of Fairview. From the window of my penthouse apartment, I watched the city skyline shift from gold to purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Yet, even as the beauty of the scene unfolded, there was a gnawing restlessness in my chest, a storm I could feel brewing. Daniel, my husband, had left earlier in the afternoon for a weekend business retreat, kissing me on the cheek as he reminded me of one thing: to take care of things while he was away. I watched him drive off, feeling a strange emptiness settle in. Little did I know that this night would lead to something I never expected. "Don't forget to keep an eye on Marcus. Make him feel at home," he had said, his tone light, casual. Marcus had moved in with us just weeks prior, eager to begin college in the city. Tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying a reserved charm, his presence in the house had always been easy. Until tonight. There was something new in the way the house felt, a stillness that bordered on an unspoken expectation. At around 7, Marcus emerged from his room and appeared in the living room doorway. His dark, slightly messy hair and the sight of him in casual jeans and a hoodie gave him a relaxed appeal that made me pause longer than I should have. He smiled gently. There was an air of casual confidence about him, the kind that didn't demand attention but effortlessly drew it. His eyes, warm and inviting, caught mine, and for a moment the room seemed to shrink around us. He smiled gently, the kind of smile that felt like a secret shared between the two of us. His movements were unhurried as he crossed the room, his presence filling the quiet space. The scent of his cologne, understated and fresh, lingered faintly as he passed, leaving me both distracted and inexplicably aware of how close he was. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to settle into the room, making it impossible not to linger on him just a little longer. "Hey, Aunt Emma," he greeted, his voice carrying warmth and caution. "Hi, Marcus, hungry?" I asked, setting aside the novel I had only half-heartedly been pretending to read. "Starving," he said, his grin tugging at the corner of his lips. The two of us migrated to the kitchen, where conversation flowed as easily as the ingredients we brought together for a simple pasta dish. At first, I attributed my apprehension to the stillness in the house with Daniel away. But as Marcus diced vegetables with surprising focus and joked with me, another realization began to form. There was a spark I couldn't ignore. Marcus chuckled, his eyes meeting mine as he stirred the sauce. Not always, but I figured it's a good skill to have. People seem to like it when you know your way around the kitchen. His smile was easy, but there was a playful edge to his tone that made me glance away, my pulse quickening. The realization began to form, slowly at first but gaining clarity with every shared laugh and sidelong glance. There was a spark I couldn't ignore. It was subtle, like the simmer of the sauce we were tending, but undeniable, heating the air around us in a way that was impossible to dismiss. "You're not bad at this," I teased when he handed me perfectly chopped tomatoes, his hands steady, sure. "I thought you'd burn water," he shot back, his wit catching me off guard. Laughter erupted from my chest, joy, real and untamed, ringing through the room like a melody against the crackling stove. After dinner, our shared connection lingered as we drifted into the living room, where Marcus sprawled on the couch, his legs stretching far beyond its edges. I retreated to the armchair, tucking my legs beneath me. Between us, the flickering light of the fireplace cast shifting shadows onto the walls, creating an intimate cocoon of warmth. His gaze lingered on me, and I felt my cheeks flush under the weight of it. There was a softness in his eyes, a warmth that felt far more personal than the fire between us. "You look different tonight," he said quietly, the words simple but layered with meaning. "Different how?" I asked, my voice betraying a slight tremor as I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "More relaxed," he said, his head tilting slightly as he studied me. "Or maybe just more you." The room seemed smaller suddenly, the space between us shrinking under the pull of his words. My breath hitched as he shifted on the couch, his long frame angling slightly toward me. Our conversation touched on his hopes for college, his plans, and a few lighthearted criticisms of Daniel, his uncle. Though I laughed at his childhood recollections, every word out of his mouth drew me further into the person sitting across from me. Beneath his youthful confidence lay a depth that tugged at me. Then came the silence. Not an awkward silence, but one so charged it became its own language. My pulse quickened when his gaze met mine, and I found myself shifting, adjusting the cushions absent-mindedly to conceal the way my heart thundered in its cage. "I think I'll head to bed," he murmured after some time, though he lingered rather than moved. "Good night, Marcus," I offered, my voice betraying the whirlwind of thoughts I struggled to contain. He stood, stretched languidly, and gave me one final look that lingered a beat too long before retreating upstairs. I stayed behind, staring not at the dying embers of the fire, but at the soft echo of his footsteps fading into the night. When I finally went to bed, sleep refused to come. The house seemed to amplify its silence, each sound a ghost that directed my thoughts back to Marcus. The weight of his gaze pressed into my mind like an unrelenting shadow, and before I could stop myself, I slipped out of bed. Barefoot and silent, I made my way down the hall. His door sat slightly ajar, a sliver of soft light spilling into the otherwise dark corridor. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice almost too soft to be heard. From within, he stirred, his form shifting under the covers as he turned toward me. His eyes, heavy with sleep but alert, fixed on me as he sat up against the headboard. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. "No," I admitted, uneasy under the weight of what I felt but couldn't yet name. I lingered by the doorframe, hesitating. "Come in," he invited, motioning to the bed. My better judgment screamed at me to turn back, to return to my bed, and drown these thoughts in oblivion. But something in the vulnerability of his gaze, a quiet, open, unspoken permission, drew me in. I crossed the threshold, stepping into the soft light of his room. I perched tentatively on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain a safe distance. Still, the air around us thickened, crackling with an energy that no amount of reason could contain. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his words disarming. "I don't know," I replied, my honesty raw and unfamiliar. "Tonight feels different." "It does," he echoed softly, his gaze unwavering, "but I'm glad you're here." His words reverberated through me as Marcus reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. The simple touch sent electricity racing through me, a pull in my chest so visceral that I let instinct drive my next move. His hand lingered over mine, warm and steady, his fingers lightly curling around mine as if testing the waters. My breath caught, and the space between us seemed to shrink further, the air thick with an unspoken tension that neither of us dared to break. Slowly, he shifted closer, his movements deliberate yet unassuming, as though giving me the chance to retreat, but I didn't. The soft glow of the fire highlighted the intensity in his eyes, which were locked on mine, searching for permission I wasn't sure I needed to give. His thumb brushed over the back of my hand, the smallest of gestures that sent a shiver coursing down my spine. The world outside the room seemed to fade, leaving only the crackling fire and the rhythmic sound of our breathing. When he leaned in, the scent of him, subtle, clean, with a hint of the cologne he wore, wrapped around me, grounding me even as my heart raced. His other hand found my cheek, his touch impossibly gentle as his thumb traced the curve of my jaw. "Is this okay?" he murmured, his voice low and rich, the words barely audible over the pounding of my heart. I nodded, my voice failing me as he closed the remaining distance between us. His lips brushed mine softly at first, hesitant, as though savoring the moment. But the hesitation melted away quickly, replaced by a deeper urgency that set every nerve in my body alight. His hand slid from my cheek to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened, each movement charged with a heat that sent my thoughts scattering. My fingers found their way to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath them, mirroring my own. "Emma," he said, his voice faltering, I've wanted to say this." I silenced him with a kiss, tentative and unsure but magnetic in its pull. Every fiber of my being screamed that it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. The moment was unshakable, impossible to resist. As his hand found my waist and drew me closer, words became a luxury neither of us sought. We spent hours tangled in each other, not just physically, but emotionally, each kiss solidifying a connection that had been simmering for weeks, but never acknowledged. His fingers traced my side with deliberate slowness, igniting a heat that spread through me. His lips claimed mine with a hunger that was both tender and insistent, while his other hand pressed against the small of my back, holding me tightly against him. We spent what felt like eternity tangled together, not just physically, but emotionally. Each kiss and touch unraveled the barriers between us, a connection that had simmered for weeks, finally coming to life. The glow of the fire lit his face, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, an unspoken promise. In his arms, I felt a raw, undeniable closeness, as if this moment had been waiting for us all along. By the time the pale light of dawn crept through the curtains, the magnitude of what we'd done began to dawn on me. We had crossed a line that could never be erased. His eyes were dark, searching, filled with a mix of passion and uncertainty that mirrored my own. "Are you okay?" he murmured, his voice low and rough, still thick with the weight of the night. I nodded, unable to find the words to capture the whirl of emotions coursing through me. My fingers brushed against his cheek, feeling the faint stubble there, grounding me in the reality of the moment. The light continued to filter in, soft and golden, bathing us in its glow as we lay there, tangled in each other. There was no going back, but in his arms, beneath the quiet hum of dawn, I couldn't bring myself to wish for anything else. The next morning, we sat across from one another in the kitchen, silent but not strained. There was tension, yes, but it was the kind born of uncertainty rather than regret. Marcus's eyes held a mix of fear and hope when he finally broke the silence. "What now?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. I stared into my coffee cup, searching for words that wouldn't feel empty. "We take it one step at a time," I said finally. "No pressure, no expectations, just us." His face softened, his lips curving into a faint smile. "I trust you," he said quietly. "I trust you, Emma." And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to breathe. Thank you for watching this episode of Silent Confessions. If this story moved you, intrigued you, or left you wanting more, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring forward thought-provoking stories of love and betrayal. Until next time, remember, every story has a secret, and every secret deserves to be told.